Good evening, everyone. Welcome to JB Knowing Broadcasting. Good to have you guys in today, this evening. Want to come in and just share briefly with you. Looking forward to the broadcast. I'm looking forward to the podcast. And I'm just looking forward to being able to communicate with you guys and talk to you and chop it up, as we say. One of the things that I want to come in today and talk about is I was with a friend, co-worker, Miss Tanya, today, and one of the things she asked me, and it kind of like resonated with me as I was conversing with her throughout the day. She started talking about her son who's in college or in school, the trade school, and one of the things that were concerning with her, and I think it happens with a lot of the parents, especially those that have children that were born during what we refer to as the Millennial Generation. And I can attest to that because of my 5 daughters. I know that at least 4, I'm positive, there are 4 that were millennials. Then I have one that was of the, I want to say that was the Generation Z. But with that being said, her concern was the fact that she was like, why is it throughout our generation, of course, you have the, you do have the generation that was the baby boomers. You have other generations such as Generation X. I'm a part of the Generation X. And you have the generation, what there were the Millennials, the X, and Generation Alpha. You also have the Generation Jones, which they don't talk about a whole lot, but they're also the Silent Gen, the last generation, and the greater generation. So, but typically the millennials were born between 1981 and 1996. Some may say 1982 to 2002. So, but the concern was because we found out that that particular generation, the millennials, they refer to them as the lazy generation. Though, I mean, if you are a parent, and you have a child that was born between that period, the millennials, I am almost positive that you can share the sentiments that the parents that have children of that particular generation, they definitely have a concern. The number one concern was, why are they so lazy? Why are they so lazy? Well, I found out in my studies, because I went back and I started researching it, having spent time, so many years in school. The first thing I started doing is researching stuff, start just looking at other authors, other scholars that have researched it. And one of the things that I found that was interesting is the millennials. They were born during the time, they were the first to experience or come along during the smartphone era. What that means is when we started experiencing smartphones, you having everything at your leisure in your hand with your smartphone. You can make a call. You can research information. You have everything at your fingertips. It was kind of like even now, so bad that you don't even remember a person's number. You just do them on speed dial, or you just kind of like place that number or that name where you can just, it's at a button. So it's kind of like one of those things where you kind of like find out that that generation got, if you will, they became so intertwined with the technology. You had computers, you had the smartphones, you had other devices where when I was coming up, if I had to research anything, I had to go to a library, do the call number, and look up that information, write it down, hoping that I can regurgitate it later for scholarly academia or whatever. So you try to find out. But this millennial generation, out of all the generations, what I found out is it is by far the largest of the generations there are. I think the Generation X come in second, but they're the largest. But they are considered lazy. In my profession, I found out that many of the ones that come in, and I spent much of my last 15 years or 14 years in my career, much of that has been spent as recruiting for that particular agent. And many times those millennials would come in, and they would come in with a pair of jeans on. They'll come in with maybe a polo shirt or with dreadlocks. I'm not knocking if that is a religious thing. What I'm saying is, when I came up, we always had to have a real neat low haircut. But the millennials have this concept, or at least it's been perceived by others, that they're lazy and they just really very lackadaisy, don't really have a very desire to over-impress. They tend to just kind of like rely on technology only. And the comparison would be during mine. I'm considered a Generation X. And during my time, it was always one of those things, even when it comes to cleaning. Now, her concern, and this is my friend, Miss Tanya, was why are they so unclean? Why are they so nasty? I mean, we go into this room and it's just like absolutely grotesque. I can speak to that. I have daughters. I won't call their name because they'll be like, Dad, why you shot me out like that? But India, Courtney, Jamesia, just to name a few. I remember, as they were coming up, it was like, oh, you'll be almost scared to walk into the room because it is absolutely horrible. I mean, literally. You know how parents tell you, or, it's been said that, don't just go in people's room because, you don't know what they're doing, and, they keep the door closed, that's their privacy. And as a parent, you're like, I pay the bills here. I go where I want. I'm going to, they may be setting off a bomb in there, or they could be doing anything. But reality is, it wasn't so much you was just scared of a bomb. You were scared of what to jump on you because the rooms be so nasty, absolutely grotesque. And so I would tell my daughters, I was like, listen, and their mother would say, listen, clean up the room. And, many times they would clean up, and then when you go in there, you find out it looks kind of okay on the surface. We're talking about the millennials and their idea of contributing to society, if you will. And so you would go in there, in the room, and on the surface, maybe the spread of the covers may be over the bed, and maybe, whatever that may have been kind of like scattered throughout the floor was picked up, and a few other things maybe, but it was still like, if you were to look under the bed, or if you were to pull out a dresser, or if you were to look behind the closet, you'd be like, this is not going to work. So her concern was, why is this generation so not clean? Why don't, and in her comparison, it would be, and I think she and I may be in that same generational X, that during our time, which my mother, who would be of the baby boomer generation, she was very, very stickler about cleaning. I remember when we would spend the summers at home when we're not in school, and she was like, clean up this house. And so we would go and we'd do our due diligence and try cleaning, and we did a much better job than those of the millennials. But when she would come in, and everything looks really good. But what she would then do is begin to pull out the couch or pull up this, cover from, this spread or move this table, and all of a sudden you see maybe dust or trash or whatever. It's not because we put it there. It's just that we only clean what we saw visibly that was on the surface, and we thought we were doing a great job, but they were more of detailed cleaners. And so during that period, we would detail what we saw visibly, but we wouldn't go the extra step and do a thorough under the bed, under the couch, pull back the spread, move the table to try to determine that. So what has happened is the millennials have also come along now, and they were introduced to technology. So now you don't have to worry about a whole lot because it's at your beck and call for the millennials. They come in, they have this, concept that, hey, I can just Google it on my phone. I can just go to the computer and look it up. I don't have to do this, When I was young, we would go outside, play marbles. We'd play basketball. We'd play football. It was all outdoors. We didn't really know about Atari until perhaps late in life. And so Atari was just like a delicacy for us. You play Atari, one of the video games. That was absolutely outstanding. So it was one of those things where you all of a sudden, you're looking at your kids who were part of the millennials like, what is going on? I mean, you don't really care. You go, you work 8, 12, however many hours you work a week. And when you come back home, your house is not just bad like you left it. If you left it that way, it's worse because they were perhaps there all day. They haven't cleaned anything. They haven't done anything. And what makes it worse is their room has not changed one bit. They just only went to the other portion of the house and made it a little dirtier or nastier. Not even considering the fact that it's okay, mom, dad, they've been out all day. They've been cleaning. They've been doing their due diligence to provide and make sure that I have a good, safe haven to kind of share with others, share amongst the family. So it's one of those things where I told her, I said, well, that's interesting because when I started to research this and I was like, millennials, I looked at them, I looked at the Generation X, I looked at the Z generation, I looked at all the other generations, the generation birthers, if you will. Nothing. It started really to deteriorate. So, study shows, and when I was looking at it, the study showed that if you wanted to blame anyone for this, there were two elements to the equation. You can direct your blame toward two directions. Number one, parents. Perhaps that's three, but parents. Why did they say parents was the reason because of the generation or the millennials not really responding or not being more engaging, not being the lazy ones? It's because during the time when the technology came in, you had, as I stated earlier, you had the smartphones, computers coming in, and they're learning, they're picking this up like clockwork. During my generation and anything prior to that, we weren't privy to that. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. We didn't have the technology, so we were not astute or privy to those things because they wasn't introduced at that time. And so by the time that they came along, we did not know really how to handle that. All we know is, okay, my child who happens to be a millennial has work to do, and wow, They don't have to go to the library. They don't have to go and seek out and research or pull out. You remember the old encyclopedias? They don't have to pull out the encyclopedias. They just go and grab the computer or phone and Google it, and instantaneously, within a matter of minutes, it's there. And so we kind of like became lackadaisical, and we kind of like became easy because it was so easy for them, and we thought, okay, great, life would be so much better for them. Well, was it? Because reality is, by them by that being so accessible, then it kind of like gravitated toward other phases of their life. Studying's not hard now because I can just Google it. I have that information. I don't have to worry about pulling out an encyclopedia. I don't have to go to the library and pull out the Rolodex or pull out the call card to try to find this out. It's at my hand. And so students come home and the parents help them with the homework. They don't have to really help them now because they had all that. So the parents just kind of like relied on them to kind of like do it themselves. So parents, according to study, you are part of the problem for millennials being lazy. That's not me. I'm not saying that. I'm not claiming that or making that declaration. I can see how that has merit, but I'm not making that declaration yet. The other thing was the fact that students are lazy and they don't kind of like, they have that mentality, is because they don't really have to depend on parents teaching them, because of the fact that many of the parents have, you have the X generation, you have the baby boomers, a lot of those particular generations have kind of like decreased. Whether that being, those that may have passed on or whatever it may be. But reality is, there's a smaller amount. And so in many cases, it's one of those things where the parents just kind of like backed away from being that parent that we experienced during the X generations, or the baby boomers experienced during their time, or those prior to that, such as, the lost generations or the last generations, which is, what was that, 1883 to 1910? Come on, yeah. But what I'm saying is, many times we looking at our kids, and I give you an illustration. I remember when I was in the process. Actually, I was in school. I was trying to work at the same time, and I was married. I was working at the same time, going to school at the same time, and I had daughters at home who were in elementary. And so during that time, it was one of those things where, whether it was Christmas or any birthday that may have come up, it wasn't during our time, like I during our times, where they were like, I want this outfit or I want this clothes. It was always, I want this iPhone. I want this particular gadget that costs hundreds or perhaps up to the thousands of dollars just for one gadget. And the fact is, they felt privy to it. Even now, they felt privy to it. They felt like they were supposed to have those things. Even now, when they turn 18, the millennials, they feel like they are supposed to have a car. I'm supposed to have a car. I'm 18, I have a driver's license. I'm supposed to have a car. And by the way, mom, dad, you're supposed to pay for it. Well, is that true? Because that goes kind of coincide with that having everything at your disposal, having a technology that you're supposed to. So now all of a sudden you're supposed to have a vehicle. Oh God, I remember when I was in grade school, we had to walk, I promise you, had to be at least 5 to 10 miles from school because my mom worked, my father worked, he worked pretty much out of town. So we didn't have that person to pick up. They didn't have bus lines during that time in Alabama. In my portion, Andalusia, Alabama. And so we would actually have to walk home from school. It took us longer to walk home from school than we did in any one of our 5 to 8 period classes. No car. Now, mind you, I did say elementary, which means I wouldn't have had a car at that time. But the same concept applied even in when we was in high school. No car. You don't get a car. You better get a friend to have a car. But it wasn't the case. So the millennials feel that at the age of 18 or even prior to that, once they receive their driver's license or permit, they should have a car. They're privy to that. So, parents, you kind of like become somewhat like I was. It was like, what is this? You know, I mean, you feel unappreciative. And it's because you know that when you were that age, you tried to at least, as whether you was a baby boomer, whether you was a Gen X or whatever it may be prior to that, after that, you always tried to make a difference, and you wanted to at least show your parents that you were responsible for the most part. You show up for interviews, shirt and tie to impress. There were times when if you show up for an interview and you didn't even have a tie or a shirt on, a white shirt, collar, I mean, they would even interview you. It was like, okay, we're good here, you know. Your appearance was your first line of defense, you know, your first way of presenting. So you'd be like, you know, now they show up in wife beaters, if they will. And so what has transcended over is the fact that now many times you see your kids, they're out, they just feel privy, and it makes you feel like you're spinning wheels, make you feel like, oh my God, what is this? You know, I mean, come on. It makes you feel like you missed a step. What did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? And I can't necessarily say like the scholars who want to claim that many times it's the parents, it's the teacher that kind of like backed away when technology came and it made them kind of like lackadaisical. I can't really say that the millennials' laziness, if you will, come from that. Because I think there's a huge gap in the sense that's kind of like during, you know, the industrial period or doing some big change in our, you know, history where something come along that was very advanced and it moved so vastly that the generation that wasn't exposed to it was trying to catch up at the same time they were trying to parent while they learn as well. So what happened in that case is parents were trying to parent and train and teach at the same time when the kids were being introduced to technology at a young age, picking it up much quicker. And so in doing so, parents began to regress or back away because they saw the student or the child or progressing in a much faster rate, and they felt comfortable with that because they felt like that was success. But in reality, it started making them lazy because they didn't have to work to gain that knowledge. I mean, to the point where we did. They didn't have to work to the point where they had to get in the car, drive to the library, sit down at the table, or go up to the call desk and ask the librarian, I'm looking for this book, and then she have to tell you to go to the call, or you would have to go into an interview, and before you get there, making sure that you had a good suit to put on and a dress tie and all the other things to go with that, not knowing that you even get the job, but trying to make your best impression. Whereas now, throw on what you get. I'm supposed to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning for an interview. I leave at home at 8:45. Just throw on something, show up, and, hey, make it work. There's a big difference. There is a huge difference. And so we have to understand that the millennials have definitely opened eyes for those who are parents. They're not bad people. I love all my daughters, every last one of them. But I can assure you, oh my God, they are true millennials. At least 3 of them. And so you just parent the best way you can. You can't blame yourself. You just parent the best way you can. You talk to them, hey, this is how we did it when we did it. It went great, but this is a new age, their reply. No. You still have to parent. So, where do we go from here? How do we move forward as parents with trying to make sure that our millennials are productive in society, that our millennials are good people and productive, and we keep them out of jail, and we make sure that they have somewhat of a religious concept or some ideology that they can base their faith upon, and make sure that when, they become our age, that they are somewhat responsible and somewhat clean, and they're doing the things that they should do in order to make sure that that we feel comfortable with the fact that at least we did our part and it came out to be at least decent. Where do we go from here? That's a good question, because the thing is, it becomes very frustrating. It becomes so frustrating. It's like one of those where you just really and truly trying to figure it out because you love your kids so much and you try to do so much for them. But then it becomes one of those where it's to the point where it's like, I love you, but if you're going to make life so difficult for me, do I need to love you from afar? What I mean by that is, I remember when I finished finished high school, oh my God, I couldn't wait to get out the house. That means freedom. I can go do what I do. I can party. I can do my thing. I can go out and hang. I can, do whatever I needed to do. And I have to worry about coming in at a certain time and just kind of like saying, hey, because I used to